Hello everyone. So after discussing the mitigation of narrowband fading, how it is done, and the various solutions, now we are come to the topic mitigation of broadband fading. So what is the difference, by the way? What is the deal with this narrowband fading and what is broadband fading? So basically, if whenever we are talking about handling the errors in a situation where the bandwidth of transmission is smaller compared to the coherence bandwidth. Now say if at all my coherence bandwidth, right, say this is my coherence bandwidth and I'm talking about tackling the problems that occur in a bandwidth which is in a data which is having a bandwidth smaller than coherence bandwidth, then it is handling problems in the narrow band. But whenever we go for higher frequencies, whenever we go for higher, okay, what this actually means, this means when the time delay spread, when our symbol duration is comfortably larger compared to time delay spread. Okay, this is the situation we are talking about when we speak about narrow band fading. But when we have the situation in opposite way where the time delay spread is larger, much larger than the pulse width, and the time delay spread is much larger than pulse width. When does that happen? That happens when the frequency of your operation, the bandwidth of your operation becomes much larger than the coherence bandwidth itself. In such a case, the all the techniques that we discussed earlier may not work, and for that we may have to go for newer, sorry, not newer, different technologies. So which are technologies we are talking about? So the techniques, sorry, not technologies. Okay, fine. So the techniques used are, so one is the option that was used, the classical one, that is going for a CDMA. Okay. So spread spectrum somehow would tackle this problem of fading in a nice manner. So the commercial version of spread spectrum that was deployed for consumer uses, the CDMA, which used this concept called as rake receivers. So let us understand the rake receivers. Okay, it had been the the preferred solution before OFDM came into picture. So we will discuss that as first method of mitigation, and then after that the next preferred method would be equalization. So we have been studying equalization in the textbook. So before even CDMA came into picture, the preferred method was equalization. So we'll discuss a little bit about the equalization, and then afterwards the next two preferred methods, okay, are OFDM as a multi-carrier modulation scheme. Okay, OFDM as a multi-carrier modulation scheme. How a multi-carrier modulation scheme can tackle the broadband fading. Tackling broadband fading means what actually here? Converting the frequency selective channel into a frequency flat channel. Then we will also discuss one more method which is slight variant from which is slightly different from OFDM. It is called as single carrier modulation with frequency domain equalization. Earlier also we discussed equalization, but see here this approach is called as frequency domain equalization. Let us see these points one by one. So let me take you to this one more slide here. Okay. Yeah, fine. Okay. So how does CDMA handle the fading, by the way? You all know CDMA. I will not be repeating it once again. You have studied it in the previous semester. Let us understand how does it work, by the way. Let us talk about not frequency hopping spread spectrum. CDMA is the direct sequence spread spectrum. How does it work, by the way? So it works something like this. Say here, okay, so here it is given. So basically what you do is you get your data, you receive the multiple replica of the data because of the fading, and then afterwards while transmitting the data you have taken a very slow sequence, right? Something like this. You remember this numerical with slow sequence, you multiply it with a PN sequence, right? You multiply this with a very high speed sequence, which is something like which is varying with some very high frequency, right? So it will be a modulo thing, and then after its receiver you once again use the same PN sequence. So only if you multiply with this particular PN sequence, the unique PN sequence, you get to receive the data. Otherwise, the data is considered as noise. Okay, remember that. Remember that. Okay, the PN sequence. Okay, just remember. Now let us go back to the thing here. So this is the usual fading situation where you can see after some time instance you are getting the multiple replica, and here you can see the transmitted code sequence. So what's going to happen is there are several replica that are going to come. Okay, now suppose say, wait a second. Okay, now suppose you are having CDMA signal with multipath. You are having say 5 paths, maybe say you are having paths. Okay, power delay profile, something like this. You are getting several paths after several delay. See, this is path 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Okay, you are getting them at different time instance. Okay, now what would happen usually is all these paths would overlap each other, resulting in spreading. But in the case of a rake receiver, what a rake receiver does is it has this so many number of correlators connected in parallel. So what rake receiver does is, now say if there is this particular replica of the a faded replica of the original signal, then in a normal receiver it will be easily received and it will cause trouble. Whereas in an OFDM, it will be received only when you correlate it with your authorized PN sequence. If at all you do not correlate, then this will be simply rejected. So the technique used in OFDM is, suppose there are 1, 2, 3, 5 paths maybe. Suppose we saw earlier channels can contain so many multiple paths, but then what OFDM does, it has this particular rake receiver thing. It decides how many replica am I going to have. Now suppose it is having only 5 correlators, then it takes them at a distance of 1, 2, 3, say this first replica, second, third, fourth and fifth replica. It will take only these 5 replica. Afterwards, remaining 3 paths, okay, if it doesn't correlate with the same PN sequence at all, then how can it be received? So it will be straight away rejected. So that is why you can see here it took only 5 paths. That's cool. The second thing is it exactly knows after how much time instant it is choosing the paths. Now say there is a first path here, then there is a second path here, third path here, fourth path here, fifth path here. It exactly knows which path it is receiving and at which time instant that path is receiving. All the paths in between with some smaller contributions, all the paths in between with some smaller contribution also will be straight away rejected. Okay, so that is one thing. That means rake receiver selects a few paths, but more importantly, it is capable of rejecting several multipaths and selecting only few with dominant power. But then isn't there be some sort of again interference, constructive or destructive? No, what a CDMA receiver does is actually it is capable of, it knows exactly which is the start bit and which is the end bit of that particular path. Okay, it exactly knows, because since it has correlated with the PN sequence, it exactly knows. The synchronization is much easy so that it can exactly overlap all those paths in phase. Okay, so the synchronization also is taken care of. See, this is not a possibility in a normal GSM communication. In GSM communication, you will get these paths, but then they will add up constructively or destructively. That too after so much of time instant, resulting in fading. Here, what would happen is they constructively add up. So more number of paths are only going to add to the strength of the signals, but then the method, the rake receiver method was sort of complicated. That's why compared to OFDM, that's why it didn't, was not continued actually in LTE. Okay, so that was the first approach to handle multipath, right? As I told you, we are talking about handling broadband fading, which happens when the time delay spread is much larger than the pulse duration. Okay, and this was the first method. What was the second method? Let us see what is the second approach. The second approach is going for equalizer. What is an equalization, by the way? We remember the standard thing equalization, right? You have your channel data h of n, and then you have your channel in between, right? Channel h of n, and then afterwards you get your output y of n. Okay, the channel, all the channel behavior along with noise is considered this h of n. So the assumption is, if at all you can model, if at all you know exactly how this channel behaves, then what you can do is, given y of n and knowing h of n, can you recover x of n back? Given y of n and knowing h of n, can you recover x of n back? Okay, that is the question. Okay, that is the question. So how can you do this? We know that x of n convolved with h of n gives you y of n. But if at all you know y of n and h of n, can you get x of n back? Well, the process is called as deconvolution. The process is called as deconvolution, and unfortunately, it is not so easy. A linear equalizer exactly did this. What it would do is, it would send a training sequence. What it would do is, it would send a known sequence for every input. Usually such signals are called as pilots. Okay, because every now and then, whenever a pedestrian moves from a maybe a suburban or urban area to a suburban area, or in the market to a cricket ground, maybe the the entire scenario changes, and entire channel needs to be modeled once again. So that's why usually a training sequence is sent. Based on this training sequence, that means training sequence is the input which you happen to know. Okay, based on this particular training sequence, whatever you receive, based on that, what you do is you assume some filter to be there in between. Okay, filter with these tabs. Okay, these tabs here indicate the various impulse response values of the FIR filter, which are nothing but your weights of the fading channel, I would say. Okay, something like this. Then afterwards, all these weights are changed dynamically. These weights are changed dynamically. If at all, whatever you are receiving, if it matches with the whatever you had sent, if at all it matches with whatever you have received, then you have set the weights properly. Okay, you have set the weights properly. This is the idea. Okay, this is the idea behind a linear equalizer, or in textbooks this comes out to be something like a deconvolution process done in the time domain. Okay, not so easy, not so easy. And even we discussed this in the previous semester in case of image processing also, that in some situations where your input channel impulse response, wherever there are spectral nulls, there will be some sort of noise enhancement problem. Remember, we analyzed this thing in the frequency domain. That means if x of n I consider it as x of f, and h of n I consider in the frequency domain as h of f. Okay, then if at all you get y of f, if at all you get y of f equal to x of f convolved with h of f, then if this y of f was simply divided by h of f, you are expected to get x of f back, right? That was the whole idea, given that you already know h of f. But sometimes what would happen is, your impulse response, the frequency response of the channel, if at all it has a spectral null, the spectral nulls are common, they occur. You can see these things are called as spectral nulls, or at some location in a finite band, it may be 0. When that happens, 1 by 0, anything by 0, this results in infinity. This results in infinity. Some noise will be there, right? Because this is not simple y of n, there will be some noise. Okay, additive wide Gaussian noise. Then noise divided by 0 goes to enhanced noise. So there is a problem of noise enhancement. So that is why linear equalizer is not a preferred one. Okay, it's not a preferred one. It still works. Okay, it still works. So what is the other type of equalizer we have? Then we have something called as a decision feedback equalizer, where they say yes, it estimates the channel frequency response rather than it inverse it seems. Oh god, no, let us not get into this much, but remember the term decision feedback equalizers. You might have studied this particular thing in detail in your lower semester, so let me not go into this. But anyway, let me tell you, the first method was CDMA and the rake receiver, where it would reject the several parts and select only few parts, then it would add them coherently in synchronously to enhance the strength. Second was equalization process, which is again sort of complicated. Actually, it was equalizers first, then came the rake receiver in the CDMA, and then the better method, which this entire textbook focuses, by the way, is OFDM as a multi-carrier modulation scheme. Okay, as a multi-carrier modulation scheme. What is meant by a multi-carrier modulation? Now suppose you have this particular data that you want to transmit. Okay, say there is a very big bandwidth data that you want to transmit. Okay, but then say this particular channel is suffering from a time delay spread of, say, something like TD. Okay, time delay spread of TD. That means now your pulse duration T, TB, shall I call it as TB, bit duration? Okay, I will call it as bit duration TB, should be greater than the time delay spread. Okay, preferably 10 times greater or 5 times greater should be time delay spread. Or speaking in terms of frequency, 1 divided by time delay spread is this particular term called as coherence bandwidth. That means if at all you can convert this high frequency channel into several parallel low frequency channels such that their individual bandwidth are less than the coherence bandwidth. What was it, by the way? Either the bit duration should be greater than time delay spread, or speaking in terms of frequency, the coherence bandwidth should be smaller than, the bandwidth should be much smaller than, where should I draw the arrow? Something like this. If at all individual channel bandwidth is much smaller than the coherence bandwidth, that also works. So now suppose, okay, so what is the solution here? So the solution would be convert this particular thing into several parallel low bandwidth channels, So what is the condition here? This bandwidth here, B, of the sub channels. Now suppose this is something like B. Say this is something like B. You convert this, this entire thing is, say, some bandwidth B. You convert it into, say, something like sub channels. Okay, I will call it as something like BS maybe. Okay, BS maybe. See, individual channels are 1, 2, 3, 4. I divide it into BS number of channels. The requirement is the width of this particular, the bandwidth of this channel should be smaller than the coherence bandwidth of this channel should be smaller than the coherence bandwidth, and it works. Okay, so what is the method, by the way? So the actual idea before OFDM and the DFT thing came into picture, the idea was something like this when they spoke about multi-carrier modulation. So tell me, why the name multi-carrier modulation? If at all you have very high bandwidth data coming, what you have to do is simply convert it to a high frequency carrier, send the data, modulate and send the data. But if at all you convert it into several lower frequencies by converting it from serial to parallel, you convert it to several lower frequencies, then what you need, then again, suppose you are earlier sending it through 10 megahertz, okay, carrier frequency. If at all I convert it into 10 parallel streams by converting data into serial to parallel into 10 streams, I need now, instead of one local oscillator, I need 10 local oscillators, each of carrier frequency 1 kilohertz. Imagine doing this in your lab with Mahmoud Ali Bhai. Okay, so now if instead of one AFO, audio frequency oscillator, you need how many? You need 10 such oscillators at transmitter. Again, for the recovery, you need 10 such local oscillators at receiver. So till 70s, this particular idea, even though it was proposed earlier, it did not materialize at all because it was not practical those days. 10 local oscillators at transmitter and 10 at receiver. Oh, no. It did not come into picture at all. Then what happened? There was one more problem. Now you see here, say I break this particular entire bandwidth. Okay, say how much is this, by the way? 1, 2, okay, 1, 2, say 3, then say 4, say 5. I break it into 5 pieces. Okay, I break this entire bandwidth into, convert the data into 5 parallel streams, and I break it into 5 pieces. Then what's going to happen is Then if at all I draw the individual sub bands, it will be something like, yeah, this is the first one. Then you need to keep cap, right? Guard band. Remember some guard band in between. Then the second one, then again guard band, then the third one, then again guard band, then the fourth one, then again guard band, then the fifth one, then again. Okay. Now see here, this in no way looks sensible and not at all bandwidth efficient, because you can see, even though the initial data was of some 5 space exactly, here you can see there is some space extra it is consuming. So this is not at all bandwidth. This was not at all bandwidth efficient, because you had to keep some guard band in between. Otherwise, there will be inter-carrier interference. Okay. So conventional multi-carrier modulation, when proposed, was not at all practical. But then came the use of DFT and OFDM. What OFDM did was, it was a suggestion where you will take DFT, which was equivalent to converting them into several parallel bands only. But now these subcarriers, what they call, will be orthogonal. They will be now orthogonal. What that meant was, so when there is a data you want to take from this particular second carrier using this carrier frequency. Now see here, these are the smaller carrier frequencies, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are the local carrier frequencies compared to this. Of course, you are not doing it now. You are simply taking DFT. You don't even need local oscillator. But symbolically, even if you consider, whenever I am considering the carrier frequency, this particular carrier frequency, I can see the contribution from this one and this lobe. The say whenever I'm talking about this third lobe, okay, whenever I'm talking about this a third lobe, say this particular lobe, the contribution from the third lobe, second one and the fourth one has gone to 0. That means if at all I take the carrier frequency here, say F3, then I take the carrier frequency F2. Okay. If at all I take the data which is there in F3 zone, and I correlate it with F2 and integrate, what I will do is I will simply get a 0. I correlate with F1 and integrate, then also I will get 0. Only if at all I correlate with F3, then only I will get the data in this particular band. So that's orthogonality, remember. So that is where this orthogonal frequency division multiplexing came. And second thing that it solved was, earlier you remember I had kept on drawing and I came to this particular space and I was yelling that this is not frequency efficient. Okay. So now what happened was, since they were going to overlap here, since they were overlapping, okay, like this, see, since they were overlapping here, so what happened was, there was no need for a guard band at all, and the entire thing will be fitting in the original bandwidth only. There was no spilling or waste of bandwidth. So that was the idea of orthogonal frequency division multiplexing. And then what happened was, in 80s, fast Fourier transform came, which was fast. Okay. So because of that, what happened? Suddenly, entire focus shifted from CDMA, which was a difference technology, into OFDM. Okay, into OFDM, and now we have 4G, even 5G coming thanks to OFDM. So this was the better method of. So how did it tackle the fading? By the way, it tackled fading by converting this particular original data having a bandwidth B much larger than the coherence bandwidth, by converting into several small segments of bandwidth B is much smaller than the coherence bandwidth. Say for example, I take a data and I take say 1024.50 for this 1024, then what's going to happen? The bandwidth is going to reduce by 1024. Okay. So that means I can get very narrow bands, very narrow bands, which may be much smaller than the coherence bandwidth. So that was the ease, right? The ease with the implementation. Remember, rake receiver, so complicated. The PN sequence, you have to do the entire thing. Okay. That was much complicated. Okay. And power consuming. But when fast Fourier transforms evolved, so multi-carrier emerged as the preferred means of tackling broadband fading by converting channel into frequency flat channels. Okay. So what is the next thing, by the way? So this is OFDM. Let us see here, OFDM, what's the deal with OFDM? So how do we do this thing? We take the data, convert it from serial to parallel, right? That is where the speed reduces. Then afterwards, you take IFFT. Why we take IFFT, by the way? This IFFT thing only makes them move from the baseband to the orthogonal bands, right? Otherwise, the data which you are converted to serial to parallel, it's there in baseband only. Its width has reduced, but still in baseband. Then afterwards, you insert CP. What is this CP, by the way? Cyclic prefix. We will come to that. Okay, we'll come to that. Then converted data from parallel to serial. Then afterwards, the whole reverse process takes place. Then after the whole reverse process takes place, that is OFDM. There is one more method, by the way. There is a small problem with this thing called OFDM. Even though it looks easy, there was a problem. Before that, let us discuss another method of tackling fading. It is called as frequency domain equalizations. And we are specifically talking about something called as single carrier frequency domain equalization, also referred earlier as SCFDE. And when you do this for accommodate multiple users, or when you use it along with OFDM, it's also known as SCFDMA, single carrier frequency division multiple access. What is the scheme? The scheme has an advantage here that it can do frequency domain equalization. What's with the frequency domain equalization? I told you earlier, you happen to have you send x of n over a channel with the impulse response h of n, and you end up getting y of n, right? You end up getting y of n. Now, given that you know y of n and h of n, you know this is known, output is known, impulse response is known. How do we get x of n, by the way? Very difficult in the time domain, which is what linear equalizer does. But if at all you convert this into frequency domain, what's going to happen? So x of n becomes x of z. Sorry, what should I say? Not x of z, x of omega, right? X of f I will call. Okay, x of n becomes x of f, y of n becomes y of f. Okay, so what is usually y of f? Y of f is given by the output is given by convolution becomes multiplication. Remember, x of f multiplied by h of f. Okay, so this is the beauty of frequency domain equalization. This is the beauty of frequency domain equalization. If at all you happen to know the channel well, then what you can do is you can simply divide this particular y of f by h of f. You can easily get x of f. See, doing this thing in the time domain, like in linear equalizers, would have been very difficult. But if at all you do it in frequency domain, it should be easy. But who is going to convert the data from time domain to frequency domain? So what we do is we take the data, convert it from serial to parallel, take DFT. Okay, take DFT. When you take DFT, okay, so subcarrier mapping, see here, look at this particular thing, this particular segment. So this equalization happens at the receiver. Okay, for the time being, neglect the transmitter. See here, what you're doing is you receive the data, convert the data from serial to parallel, take DFT. When you take DFT, what's going to happen is your y of n is going to become y of f. Then afterwards, what you do is you perform this particular equalization. Okay, with h of f, the frequency response of the impulse response, assuming that you know by sending some training sequences what is your frequency response. And then afterwards, again you convert the data into y of n back by taking IDFT. Isn't it cool? So you do not have to do it in time domain. You can do it in frequency domain. Just much better, much easier. So that is the idea behind frequency domain equalization. Take DFT to convert the data into frequency domain so that you do not have to do the deconvolution. Rather, you can simply do the division. Use that is equalization. Again, the take IDFT, convert it back. Okay. So there you get the data. There is one more problem. The reason why single carrier frequency domain equalization or its variant FDM is used, and there is a cyclic prefix. Why they are using cyclic prefix and all that also we'll discuss in the topics to come. But for the time being, let me tell you this particular thing, x of n becoming x of f, right? We simply use this particular expression, right? Y of f equal to y of f divided by h of f. That gave us x of f, right? That means we could recover our input back. But there was one thing, right? What are we using? Are we using DTFT here? Are we using DTFT? Remember, we are using chips here. We are using chips here. Chips means chips where inputs are also digital and outputs are also digital. Inputs are discrete, outputs are discrete. So this particular thing held good. Okay, this particular thing held good for linear convolution. Then that is true for not DFT but DTFT. Okay, for DFT, what is it? What sort of convolution is it? So for DFT, it's not linear convolution, it is circular convolution. So this particular thing is not true always. There was a problem, remember, there was a problem. What is the difference between a linear convolution and circular convolution? What would happen is, in linear convolution, in circular convolution, suppose I have some linear convolution whose result is say something like 1 2 3 4, say 5 6 and 7. Say I have a linear convolution whose output is 7 points. If at all I wanted to find 4-point circular convolution, what should I do? This 5 6 and 7 shall be overlapped here, right? Remember this problems which we did in our 5th semester. This needs to be overlapped. So that is why here in this particular frequency domain equalization, to have such a simulation where some cyclic prefix would be, they know the data that is going to exist in the end is going to come and overlap in the beginning. They thought of avoiding this situation by this clever concept called as cyclic prefix. We will discuss this particular thing in the next class. Okay, in the next class, in the fresh module. So what did we study in this particular module, by the way? So we started with the basic path loss model, right? Shadowing and path loss. Then we discussed about a multipath fading, and we spoke about the models, right, which are the statistical models and empirical models, both for path loss, and then specific models for multipath, which are especially the expressions we are holding it only for LTE. And then we spoke about this terms, especially what were those? There was something called as time delay spread and coherence bandwidth. Okay, then there was Doppler spread and coherence time. Okay, that's the second thing. Okay, this Doppler spread and coherence time, this actually is the bottleneck why the entire fading cannot be avoided. Okay, then we also spoke about coherence distance. Okay, angular, what is that? Angular spread and coherence distance, which was something about the distance to be maintained between the antennas when we are speaking about the MIMO technology, right, which is one of the enabling technology of 4G, right? That also we discussed. Then we came to a fading and how do we mitigate the narrow band fading. As I told you once again, narrow band fading was the situation where we are assuming that already the bandwidth is much smaller than the coherence bandwidth, and smaller issues we are addressing, and that means few bits going into errors it was. And how do we tackle it? And several suggestions came, right, from adaptive modulation, coding, the power control, right? So all those things were discussed there. Then finally today, as the last topic in the module, we discussed how do we handle broadband fading, and the method suggested were the popular scheme in 2G, that was linear and decision feedback equalizers. Then the popular scheme in 3G, that was CDMA, right, is in the form of rake receiver. And finally we have discussed these two terms, OFDM as a multi-carrier modulation scheme, where instead of having a single carrier, we will convert the data into several low bandwidth channels, which are to be transmitted using several local oscillators or several carriers, which was symbolically equal to using DFT at the transmitter, IDFT at the receiver, and I clarified that it was the evolution of this invention of fast Fourier transform which enabled us to do all these things. And then we discussed about single carrier frequency domain equalization, somewhat mysterious, but frequency domain, it's always cool to do this deconvolution by converting the deconvolution into simple division. Okay, that should be always better. Okay, that's the end of this particular module. So in the next module, we'll discuss OFDM in larger detail, and why OFDM, any problems are there with OFDM, and how SCFDMA tackles those problems. Okay. That's that. Thanks for joining. Now let me find sort out what sort of assignments can be given based on this module. Okay. So let me end this thing here. Bye.